week's episode of Three True Values. We are wrapping up our top 10 coaches series, getting you through the off season, getting you some more content out there before we really start ramping things up here in a couple of weeks with season previews. That's right. We are just right around the corner from talking basketball once again. We'll have guests on throughout that course of the month to break down all of the conferences that you care about, and we will get you fully prepared for what to expect across each of those conferences. But first, we have to wrap things up here. We have ranked the top 10 coaches in the ACC. We have ranked the top 10 coaches in the Big 12, the top 10 coaches in the SEC, and today it is time to rank the top 10 coaches in the Big 10 Conference. So if you have missed any of those previous conference breakdowns, please go check them out. They're on the podcast feed, also in written form at On3. Those are all out by now. You can just search for them either through my name or going through the college basketball tab. Of course, it is the top 10 coaches in each conference. You can probably just type those into Google as well. And the origin of this, just one last time, we'll recap, we'll go through what we're doing here. We are ranking the top 10 coaches in each conference heading into the 2025-26 season. So that incorporates a lot of things. Of course, their historical achievements are a big part of what we are going to discuss. But also, how have they adapted? College basketball has changed a lot over the past few years. Are they still recruiting in the same way? Are they utilizing the transfer portal properly? Have they adjusted to some of the differences in the game of basketball? Have they changed the way that they play with the times? Some of these young coaches, how much have they proven? How much do they need to repeat it in order to show us that they are here for the long haul, that they are one of the top coaches for some time? There's a lot that goes into this, and so these rankings are always going to be up for debate. And I'm all for that. There is plenty case for a lot of these coaches to be further up, further down, depending on how you view things. So not shying away from that one bit. But as we get things going, as we get started talking about the Big Ten, I have in the number one spot, Matt Painter at Purdue. I think that he has started to create this slot for himself where he is at the top. I had questions last year. They come off of the Zach Edey era. Obviously, you've got a back-to-back National Player of the Year, somebody who truly just dominated the sport of college basketball, was a force to be reckoned with every night he stepped out there. So how did Purdue respond? What were they going to do to create different advantages? They were going to play without this towering presence for the first time in a number of years. And Matt Painter delivered. Again, Purdue was right up there in the mix. They were in the conversation as a top 10 team, a team that had some juice heading into the NCAA tournament, and really left no questions that they are here to stay, that they are going to sustain this over a long period of time. Of course, last year also did not bring in any transfers. This year, they bring in an interesting mix of players to the team. They do bring in Oscar Clough. There's also some international prospects coming in. And I think they're just kind of resetting and getting ready for the next era of Purdue basketball. I said this on a recent podcast, or might have just been in a conversation, but Matt Painter, I'm not sure if any coach has a more defined set of roles that he recruits to, that he coaches. He wants the big center who can set screens and get in around the basket with some post work. He's got the point guard who is heavy pick and roll, great facilitator, runs the offense. He's got a 6'6" or so power forward who's in the mix, who does a little bit of everything, a real long, gadgety kind of player. And then two guards on the wing who are going to space the floor, who are going to knock down shots and serve as just cogs in the system for those other players. It's very impressive, the ability to repeat that model year over year recruit, replace in behind, have guys step up into the role when they're ready for it. I really like what Matt Painter does over now a long, long track record. And of course, hit the peak of the program in that run with Zach Edey. Has not fallen, though, afterwards. I really like his ability to maintain what he has. Tom Izzo comes in at number 2, and man, Tom Izzo, if we're talking career resume, he is still number 1 in this conference. I don't think it's particularly close, even though Painter does have a fantastic resume of his own. Tom Izzo, the only reason he still is at number 2 for me right here is his pushback against changes in college basketball, and I can understand it. You're a Hall of Fame coach. You have the right to complain about how things have changed when you believe that they have gone a negative direction. There are very, very few people, forget coaches, there are very few people with more impact on college basketball. This is a guy who helped name the athletic director at his school. He has influence. So when he talks, people listen. And so I understand him fighting back against the changes, transfer portal, NIL, all of these things. And he's not fully against it. He's fully against the way that it has been implemented. He's made that clear. But I just feel that if he could embrace at least the transfer portal a little bit more, if he had done it a little bit earlier, we could have seen a difference in this Michigan State program. I just feel like there was a little bit left on the table over these last couple of years. And so it makes me slot at number 2 for now. Of course, if we're talking about career achievements, yes, he is number 1 here. I think that this Hall of Fame coach has started to more and more get back into the mix. We saw them land some transfers this season who were going to be a little bit more in the mix. Of course, the year before, they brought in 1 or 2, really one role player, and then a guy who was kind of an in case of emergency backup. But this year, they had really added to the rotation. They had to a little bit with the departure of Trey Holloman. But an early injury just kind of already has them set back in some way. Have no doubt, though, that he's going to get the most out of the group that he has. At number 3, we have Dusty May at Michigan. He was the hot up-and-coming coaching name when he landed at Michigan, and man, did he deliver fully in year 1. He put together a roster that a lot of people questioned. There were so many people wondering what was going to happen with this 2-center system. Did it make any sense? What were they thinking? And it worked. And man, did they find a unique setup there, an ability to really just build out a second weekend NCAA tournament roster that made the most of everything that they had. And I thought that was really impressive. That's what he did at Florida Atlantic as well. He brought in a group of players and then found the best way to maximize all of them in one rotation. We now see, as he brings back a second roster, a little bit more in terms of shaping things. Of course, that comfort of being in a system for a second year. Look at these coaches that are ahead of him have both been in place for long, long times at their schools. He is now in his first season where everything is laid out. He's got his staff in place. He doesn't have to worry about all of the things that come with changing jobs. He is now just focused on building his team, building his program. And I think we're going to see continued strong results as he does that. At number 4, we have Brad Underwood at Illinois. This is another guy who has really just maximized everything that he has been given. The Illinois program is one of the most interesting to me. And Brad Underwood, in that same vein, he's a guy who went from JUCO to Stephen F. Austin, Oklahoma State, Illinois. And it's felt like he bounced around and he had success and success and success. And now he gets to Illinois. And I wonder how many people thought it was more of a springboard than a landing spot. But now where he is, it feels like he has kind of turned this Illinois program into his program. And I have really enjoyed the balance that he has found in he'll jump out and go get a big time player if they're on the board and they're interested in Illinois. But he's also going to develop people within the program. And he's going to find the right fits in the transfer portal to continue growing towards success. We have seen him more than any coach, and this is what's really fascinating to me moving forward, is he has wholly embraced the ability to sign international players. Of course, there have been the jokes about how many Eastern European players they have this season. Even he got in on the fun a little bit. And I'm so curious to see how it plays out, not just this year, but as they continue to recruit, as they continue to land players. Does Illinois become this slightly ahead of the curve group that is trying to find what their advantage is? They're not going to be one of the blue bloods chasing 5 stars, chasing necessarily all of the guys who are wanting big, big money in the transfer portal. But can they go find the best players outside of that and get them all to fit together? That's going to be something interesting to follow. He's also put some guys in the NBA. There's been some real success in the Illinois to NBA pipeline, which is another big boost when you're trying to land these players. At number 5, Mick Cronin at UCLA, still a high-level coach. Of course, had some issues. There was a dip in performance a couple of years ago, and he was very vocal that he was not getting the support that he felt like he needed to succeed in the job. It was very clear from their roster that they just did not compete on the same level as other blue bloods when it came to adding talent through the transfer portal. Of course, he famously added a few international prospects late just to get a full roster together, and it just didn't all come together. And it felt like he was unhappy with what he had put together. Obviously, that rubs off, and then trying to maximize what they had. Mick Cronin, though, is still a very good basketball coach. Doesn't matter where you put him. He is just excellent at coaching in general. I think he's one of these guys you try to put your finger on. Okay, is he a recruiter, a culture builder? Is he, an X's and O's genius? Like, he's just solid all around in what he does. And man, does he wear his heart on his sleeve, and that can be fun a lot of times too. Darian DeVries at Indiana after just 1 year at West Virginia. Look, he was probably the top coach available 2 years ago, or one of the top coaches in this cycle. He again was one of the top coaches available. I thought it was as close to a home run as you're going to get if you're Indiana. A guy who went into West Virginia. Yes, they missed the NCAA tournament, wrongfully so. If you ask just about anyone, they should have been in. And that was with his star player, his own son, injured for most of the season. So you take the best player off of a team, and he still was in that mix in year 1 at West Virginia, which was going through a lot of turnover at the time. Yeah, I'm buying big in Darian DeVries, being able to get this Indiana thing pointed the right direction, being able to build out a roster that is able to compete in the Big Ten. I think he'll slowly move up this list as time goes on, as we see a larger track record of him in this conference with this school, building out his program. At number 7, I'm going Greg Gard at Wisconsin. Another one of these guys that flies under the radar. He just consistently puts together a solid NCAA tournament team every single season. They don't produce big 5 stars. They don't go land big splashy transfer additions, but they find the guys who fill the holes on their roster, and they go out there and they compete against these big time programs day after day, year after year, and Wisconsin is always in the mix. We've seen them have some really high highs as well, making Final Four appearances, but a model of consistency is Greg Gard at Wisconsin. Buzz Williams at Maryland. He comes in at number 8, and this is an interesting one. Another guy who I think could probably move up the rankings pretty quickly. I've talked at length about Buzz Williams before, particularly when he had the Texas A&M job. I was slightly outspoken. Obviously, I didn't just go out fully on a limb because it was not reporting. It was a lot of my understanding of how he had built his career, the approach that he had taken, looking at the situation both at Texas A&M and in his career at each of the stops and each of the times that he left somewhere. This is a guy who wins. Everywhere he goes, he is going to put together results at a high level. And so when you look at him going from the Texas A&M job to the Maryland job, probably some confusion on why he did that. He is a different kind of guy. He's an extremely smart basketball coach. And he cares about his players on really a whole different level. But he also values change. He's a guy who, when he looks at the coaching profession, he understands some things at a different level, I feel like. When he looks at his ability to get to a second contract at a school, sometimes rather than thinking about long-term security and building beyond that, he says, look, if we reach the heights that he wants to reach in that first contract, even on that second contract, if you don't go above those expectations, they're going to start to view it from a complacency standpoint. They're not going to view it as impressive when you make it to the Sweet 16 if you've made it to the Sweet 16 3 years in a row. They're going to question why you haven't broken through to the Final Four. Very interesting approach to things. And he's also somebody who likes new challenges, who will be interested in new things as he goes along. So he lands at Maryland. I have no doubt that he will have great success there as well. At number 9, we've got Ben McCollum at Iowa. I mean, what are you going to say about this guy? He goes from Division II to Division I, and everybody questions him. They ask, how is he going to do this? He takes over from Darian DeVries. That feels like a big downgrade. You hire a Division II coach coming off of, the hottest name, one of them in the coaching carousel. Well, prove yourself. What are you going to do? What does he do? He brings in an entire Division II roster and tries to compete at the Division I level. There were a lot of questions about that. Well, those questions proved to be pretty stupid because he goes to the NCAA tournament and becomes one of the most efficient teams in all of college basketball, playing a pretty unique style, slow it down pace, very methodical. It's a lot of high impact decision making out there from his players that he expects. That's why he brings a lot of his guys with him, because they know the system, they understand what he wants, and they can then teach it to the next group of guys. So now he goes from Drake to Iowa, another huge leap in competition level. He again brings not all, but he does bring quite a few of his players, first from Division II, then from Drake. They are now at Iowa. And I think there would be a lot of questions. Can they compete? Can they really make that big of a jump again? Well, not only did we see them dominate at Drake, we saw them in some games against high-level competition, some high major opponents, and the players looked like they belonged. So much so that Bennett Sturts probably could have been in the NBA draft conversation if he had not chosen to return under Ben McCollum, but move to Iowa in the transfer portal. At number 10, we've got Eric Musselman. The stock has slipped some on Musselman over these past couple of years. Of course, his last season at Arkansas was a debacle from start to finish. Look, he had a great run of success at Arkansas, but when you overhaul the roster every year, when it's 11 new transfers and 2 recruits every time out, it only takes one season of it going horribly wrong, just a bad fit of players, just on the court, off the court, everything just not meshing together. It takes that one time for there to be a lot of unrest. And of course, as we know, the domino effect that occurred in the coaching carousel, it lands Eric Musselman at USC. So he takes over a program that is trying to hit reset after a disappointing season as well. And he overhauls the roster. And there were some signs of growth, some good things, some bad things, but they don't make the tournament. I think that was a little bit of a failure for a coach that a lot of the pitch is his ability to come in and instant impact because he's overhauling the roster. You wanted to see a little bit more there from that group. He does it again this year. Already a blow in losing Elijah Arenas, at least for most of the year, it appears. Potentially the full season with a meniscus tear. I mean, that was their 5-star guard, a guy who I was very high on. I had him in the mix as a top 10 pick in the NBA draft next year based on what I've seen from him. So a massive blow already for USC. We'll see how they recover from that. How can they replace it? But Eric Musselman, he's still got that track record. He's still a guy who has made deep NCAA tournament runs year after year while replacing the roster. There is something to be said for that. Has he lost that touch? I'm not quite sure, but we will see over the next year or two. He's going to have to get it back to get this thing rolling at USC. That is the end of the top 10. Of course, the coaches who missed out, this is in alphabetical order of teams. I'm not ranking them, but we've got Ben Johnson at Minnesota, Fred Hoiberg at Nebraska, Chris Collins at Northwestern, Jake Diebler at Ohio State, Dana Altman. Man, how do you leave Dana Altman off of this list? That is how deep this is. Mike Rhodes at Penn State, Steve Peichel at Rutgers, and Danny Sprinkle at Washington. I want to make it clear just one last time here. I am not ranking the worst coach in a conference. There is no good that comes from that. These coaches are all excellent coaches. They're all at the top of their profession. They are all very, very good at what they do. Excuse me. I believe I said Ben Johnson at Minnesota. That should be, of course, I'm thinking right here off the top of my head and misspoke. Ben Johnson, of course, not the head coach anymore. It is former Colorado State head coach Nico Medved who returns home to that Minnesota job. Regardless, though, I really like Medved. I really like Altman. Obviously, why wouldn't you? What he's done over the course of his career. A lot of these coaches down the line, big fan of what they've been able to do. But the reality is, if you're going to rank a top 10, somebody's got to fall down. And it might come down to resources that they have. It might come down to how long they've been in the job. It might come down to some things that are outside of their other things that are outside of their control. Who knows? Maybe it's just that deep of a conference in terms of how good the coaches are. So I'm not going to rank who is at the bottom of the conference here. It just doesn't benefit anyone. It just doesn't accomplish anything really. But we are on razor thin margins here. As I said, I like a lot of these guys. I wish that I could put a lot of these guys in the top 10, and they are just one good season, one recruiting class, one transfer class away from being in this mix again for the top 10. This concludes our series, the top 10 coaches in each conference. We have broken them down across the Power Four. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that this has helped get you through the off season as we wait for preseason basketball to get underway. I'm James Fletcher. Thanks for tuning into 3 True Values. We will have plenty more content for you here in the coming months as we get ready for the season to tip off. You're not going to want to miss it right here on 3 True Values. Thanks for tuning in.